Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. People of Perth and beyond, we know that you love it when we talk about Nintendo, which is why we're not going to do that at all today. It's time to bring up a new genre that we haven't talked about as a group. But before I go into that, I want to welcome back Ed to the show. Ed, awesome to have you back. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, Jono. It's December now, isn't it? It's
It
almost the end of the
is
year.
Christmas
2024 has just
time.
gone by. Yeah. Happy to
Yeah.
be back. Third time, I think.
Third
No?
time. Third time.
Yeah.
Lucky. Here to talk about some real-time and
Oh,
tactical and
can't wait to get
simulation
into
strategy
it.
games. Oh, very good. And Johnny, as always, awesome to have you on the show. How you doing, man?
Very good, man. Jono, it's second last episode of the show. I can't quite believe it. Of the year.
Yes.
Of the year,
Yes.
to
Yeah,
specify.
of the
It's
year. And
2024.
yeah, exactly. And the people of Perth and Beyond will be sad about that, undoubtedly. But we will have a big end of year wrap up episode in a couple of weeks. So don't worry about it. So yes, we're going to talk about some of our favorite old school real time turn-based tactical strategy games, simulation-related strategy games as well. All of us grew up playing the PC games, and this is a genre Johnny and I and previous guests, hosts haven't really talked about much. So it's time to do it now. It's a great genre to get into over the Christmas period because it's the kind of genre that takes a lot of hours, like you want to sink a lot of hours into to play a great game, whether it's a little skirmish or it's a full campaign. So we're going to kick it off with one of the kind of best franchises that we haven't seen a new entry in for a while. Ed, tell us all about XCOM Enemy Unknown, full-on sci-fi.
Yeah. So XCOM takes its name, is an abbreviation of Extraterrestrial Command. And you take the role of a commander in charge of Earth's forces as like aliens have just started invading the Earth, and they're going around different cities and then landing, and then you send out your squads in to hopefully intercept them before they disappear and, capture humans and destroy a city and things like that. And I think sorry, because sometimes, usually like, it's just like, they're going to Sydney or they're going to Phnom Penh or
It's
to
New
Tokyo.
York. It's New York or
But then
something like that
actually
in the movies.
Perth, WA actually comes up as one of the roster of cities because it's a finite list. I think it's about maybe like 50 cities, and then Perth is one of those. Like, yes. And for some reason, like the Earth's industrial capacity is located around it.
I mean, it's because the podcast is here, Ed. That's why they want to get onto that straight away and broadcast.
I know
to
they
people
need
of
to
Perth and
take
beyond.
it down. It's like it's key to Earth's defenses. There.
Exactly. Makes sense.
Yeah, so I think it's from 2013 from memory. This game, so it's a bit dated at the moment, but it's an amazing game to play. It's really good fun. It's technically a reboot of the original XCOM from, I don't know the exact year, but sometime in the 90s, I believe, which I played a little bit of. And it is, like many of the games of that era, very difficult. And it's one of those where it's a lot of RNG and there's a lot of random number generator going on, and you every time it's the base gameplay between the original and the new one is more or less the same, right? You in command of this base, so there's that it's all turn based, but one part of it is you're in command of this base, and you have a certain amount of money that you can spend on upgrading a base, building barracks and power plants so that you can create research labs and hangars for your interceptors to shoot down the UFOs so that force them to land so you can take out the aliens that are inside the UFO, things like that. And then once you do that, right, you decide to send your squad, and then like a lot of these sorts of games where you can choose and manage your team, equip them with certain weapons and armor, and train them in certain skills, and then you pick your 6 guys or 4 guys, and you send them out. They land in their ship, and then you can slowly explore the area, just turn by turn, just trying to make sure you don't get ambushed by the aliens.
Very slowly is key, isn't it?
Exactly. And then try to lure them into kill zones and ambush them as well. And then, eventually you progress, you research new weapons, and then you encounter bigger and more difficult enemies. Eventually leads to a kind of boss kind of fight at the end. But it's just a lot of good fun because a lot of these games that I like is you have this progression over time. Is that it's not just, I mean, I love the StarCrafts and I love the, those competitive real-time games you play in half an hour and you build up from nothing to get to the end. Someone wins or loses and you start again. And that's great. And I love the gameplay in those. But I think my favorite sorts of games is where over time you progress, you build an empire, you build a squad, you train them up and give them names or whatever and things like that. And when one person dies, it's like, oh no, it's like you spend 20 hours just training this person up, and then they get killed. It's like, maybe reload.
And it's stressful, like with these games, like when you lose, particularly on the battlefield. So because it's that turn-based tactical setup where you might have a 3 or 4 man squad, when you lose one, you're all right down. Like tactically, it's more easy for you to be flanked. You have less turns, less attack options. It becomes even more desperate and stressful. Is that what you experienced with this game?
Yeah, it's always that the conflict between like, I want to send this guy out here because he has a better chance to hit this target over here. But if I send him out there, because it's a lot of fog of war, you don't know exactly where the enemy is. If you send him out there, he might get caught and be flanked by someone else that you didn't see over there. And that's happened to me. And he thinks, I'll go on top of this roof so I can get advantage on hitting anything below me. But you don't know what's up there. So it's always like constant. It's like, how slowly do you want to take? How careful do you want to be? Versus if I go now, I'll know I'll get advantage on hitting this particular target here. Right, but then if I wait, he might reposition somewhere else or pull in some of his friends that pulls me out of position and things like that. And so it's always that constant dynamism to the fights that I really enjoy, and I put so many hours into it.
Yeah, I haven't played the first one, but with the second one, I've played a lot of that, and I'm not sure how similar they are, but just the model, like, so every battle you go into, like, you have that squad. I think in the second one, it's a 3-person squad, and you can customize your characters and loadouts. So you have, like, snipers, assault, you can do all that stuff. But just that initial stage where you kind of helicopter into a building, don't know where the aliens are. It's like fog of war, and you're slowly moving your squad up. And it's like, there's one. All right, now I've got to reposition the rest of my squad. And then another one appears. And it's a great, even though, like, I know some people don't like tactics-based games, like turn-based, but it doesn't feel slow or sluggish. It does feel very, like, alive and tense, because your squad can do, like, covering fire. You need to be behind enough cover, to increase your chance of, like, avoiding shots. You need to set up, like, all of your like squad mates to be, like, the most efficient way to take down aliens from different angles. And then the variety of enemies is really cool. So I don't know what the enemies were like in the first game, but in the second one, I remember one of the early enemies you encounter is an alien who can do mind control. And it's a shock because it comes out the door really quick, and you're like, what's this? Like, it's like a classic ET type alien. It comes up and it just, like, mind controls your squad mates and turns them on themselves and makes them run. I'm like, what is this? Like, this is... And it's stressful. Like, it's like, I now need to be flexible and adapt to that situation turn by turn. Did you have any memorable aliens or, like, battles in
definitely.
particular?
I think the tone of the first game was really good. Like, it was very
very like X-Files
body horror. Yeah, X-Files, body horror, that kind of thing. And it takes all these tropes from, like, classic science fiction. Like, the first enemy you meet is, like, the sectoid, which is like the big bulbous head Martian type thing, and like the UFOs are just those flying saucer shapes as well. So they take all those inspiration and now you get to fight these things. And then you meet this. I think in the second game, I can't remember what they're called, but they're the snake ones.
Yes, the white ones move really quick.
So in the first game, you see them as these, like, really long, thin. They're dressed in suits, and they have, like, these, I don't know, they have sunglasses, or whether it's actually the color of the black eyes or something. And what the idea is that, and they never show the snake part of it, the original part, but the idea is that they just basically wrap themselves in this, and then in this bodysuit. And then that's why they move around really weirdly, because they look like they're people, and they're infiltrating, cities and stuff like that. But in reality, they're these snake people that they're taking the skin suits of people, and they're going around and spitting acid at people. And then there's the other one, the classic, I can't remember the name of it, but there's these like chitinous, like bug-like aliens, and they go around and they stab people in the head, and then
like
they
a
do
face
that,
hugger type thing.
They deal massive amounts of, like, melee damage, and if you die from that, then your corpse comes back as a zombie, and then you come around. And I think the first mission you meet them in, you get this distress call from this fishing village in the Arctic somewhere, very like The Thing. Is that the movie? The one where they're in the Antarctic and they find this alien in the ice. What's that movie called?
Not sure.
Classic science. Anyway, Anyway, so you go into this, Arctic visions. There's blood everywhere, bodies everywhere, or no bodies everywhere. That's the problem. And then there's these like hanging massive like fish hooks of like fish and whales and stuff. And then like eventually you get close to one, and then you hear this sound popping, and then it's like out of this corpse is like this new the bug thing that's attacks you. It's like and then you see the zombies and things. It's great, and it's a lot of fun. It's very cinematic, I think, as well, because like whenever you come across an alien for the first time, the camera changes, and then it has the whole like this short movie, and then it bursts out and it attacks you. It's like Yeah,
I don't know about the first one, but I remember in the second one when they introduced a new alien, there's this cutscene that shows like the doctor or whatever on your ship who's dissecting the aliens and tearing them apart and just talking about all the the things that it does, and it's just this comical kind of very cool thing. Yeah, XCOM Enemy Unknown, great one to start with. Johnny, what do you got for us for your one that's first up?
Well, I wanted to take us back to the very early days of kind of tactical, or not so much tactical, but more just city building simulation, also known as SimCity. So back in the early 90s, I spent a lot of time sinking hours at my friend's house into building roads, hospitals, lots and lots of police departments, because there was always crime in Sims. All your cities in SimCity were always just full of crime, and inevitably blowing the SimCity budget, which rapidly led to going for that very naughty budget cheat code to get some extra budget, probably through somewhat nefarious means.
Sounds like real life, Johnny.
Yeah, it's like
council style.
Corrupt urban planner simulator on your PCs in the 90s.
Nice.
But this was strangely addictive, this gameplay, and like doing all kind of random road, and I think you got to do rail at one point too. I don't know if that was in a later edition, or it probably was in the original too. But there are hazards, like you could have natural as well as like just mundane crime and that sort of thing. You could also have like natural disasters. And I remember when this was ported to the Super Nintendo, they included Bowser as a sort of kind of Godzilla type threat coming through and causing all sorts of damage, which is a nice touch for the Nintendo port. But yeah, no, did you guys play any SimCity back in the day?
Yeah, I played the first and the second, and I think the fourth game. I didn't play one of the ones in the middle. I played the very first one as well, and it's just like, I think it's just fun. It's like you just plot a land, it's nothing, it's just blank, and then you just slowly, create order in this chaos kind of thing, and then just making the city exactly how you want to look it, like it to look, and then I think the gameplay loop of just you put on these buildings to make more money, which increases your population, which increases crime. You put a police department, and then later editions you put in like schools to educate people, and then you run out of power and you put in a new power plant on that to do the rubbish. And it's just that constant loop of like just increasing complexity of your cities, and just managing that and watching this thing grow. And it's like, haha, now it's like 1 million people here or whatever it is. Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, it's an awesome game. I didn't get into the building management side as much. I found it a bit complex, a bit slow for me at the time when I was growing up with this game. But as you can see from the footage here, I would just focus solely on that disasters tab, and I'd build the minimal amount possible. And then I think if I remember correctly, like the original game, like there'd be, or with a future one, there'd be randomized disasters. But for me, I'm like, no, I need to see the tornadoes. Tornado, just wipe everything out. And then and I'm like, that's fine. I don't care about the city. Tough luck. I mean, good old Johnny maybe he should be like in government because he's looking after the budget, and here I am trying to like wipe out the city with natural disasters. But I remember like seeing, like with the footage we're seeing here, it shows the power out flashing. It becomes very stressful, like when you get, I don't know if you get garbage or something, but maybe you get like the power out, and you get like population dissatisfaction or something like that. It can become a stressful game if you don't keep everything well balanced. Is that right, Johnny?
Yeah. As you get into the later game, there's more and more to kind of manage. So at the
Mm.
beginning, it's fairly simple. You're just building some roads and some buildings, but then after a while, you've got quite a lot going on. So yeah, it can get quite hectic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so that's SimCity, and yeah, I do recall my brother actually had the one on the Super Nintendo,
Yeah,
and
right.
it looked a bit different to this. Like it had a few extra
Yeah.
things, like Mario was in the game. I don't know if he was like the mayor or something like that. I remember Bowser being there, and it
Mm,
was cool that they actually ported for this. Again, the Super Nintendo was a port machine for everything back in the
mm.
day. So amazing classic series with lots of modern versions out there. Well, mine is one of the biggest series that was around back in the day by a company known as Westwood. And later they folded or they were absorbed by EA. I have to bring this one up because it would just be wrong not to. This is Red Alert 3. So there's Command and Conquer Red Alert, Command and Conquer Red Alert 2. There's the Tiberium Sun games. There's quite a few Command and Conquer games. But with the third one, I had to bring that one up in particular just because the premise of the game is so freaking cool of all the games. So essentially, this is like one of the bigger like real-time strategy not turn-based, but yeah, real-time strategy games. And the premise is, in the previous game, the Allies go back with Albert Einstein and they assassinate Hitler to stop Germany rising as a superpower, which leads to the Soviet Union becoming a superpower and your chief rival in the games. The third one does a bit of a take on this, where the Soviet Union's like, oh, we're going to lose to the Allied forces, so now we're going to go back in time. We're going to kill Einstein so that he can't kill Hitler. And they're like, that's great. Unfortunately, this means that Japan, the Emperor of Japan, becomes a superpower because obviously Einstein hasn't created the atom bomb, and it all goes to hell. And that's the start of the game with the classic Hell March music playing at the start. So these, if anyone who's played any of these games, they're all really good. The third one copped a bit of flack because it had a bit of a bright color palette, and some people didn't like that. I thought it was pretty good. But I think with these games, the things that you love, like as someone growing up with them, is the amazing full motion video. I don't know if you guys remember the term FMV, guys. In between missions, you would have like famous actors like Lucy Lawless, Tim Curry, even Holly Valance from Neighbours Australia is in this game. It's like, oh my god, what are you doing here? You made it big one day, you know. So, and it's great. So you can choose between the three superpowers. They have their own campaigns. But what I love most about these games is the zany units that are just so ridiculous. So the Soviet Union, of course, has like grizzly bears, which are tamed, covered in armor, and you can launch through a cannon as you do into an enemy territory. Or there's like Japan's all based on kind of like what you see in popular culture about Japan, like mechs and anime. So you'll see a helicopter, you use helicopters, which are great units, and then they can just transform into walking mechs, and like, of course they could. And I think their super soldier is like a giant samurai mech, which of course it is. Like you would deck out a giant robot in like a samurai helmet for some reason. Just really cool. A lot of goofy fun. Did either of you guys get into this series at all, like the original, the second, or the third, over time?
Yeah, definitely. Like I started with the first game. I put so many hours into that first game, and actually because I had a pirated disc.
Oh, who didn't?
Anyone know what pirate? They don't even know what that means these days.
What's a pirated disc?
But anyway.
What's a disc? Yeah, yeah.
There we go.
Nice.
It's like, hang on, why'd you have to put it on the physical thing? That's
yeah, where do I put this thing?
Where was the internet?
There's a USB port somewhere.
Anyway, yeah, so I had a pirated version of it, which meant I could play through most of the missions and stuff until like the last two missions of the Soviet campaign. And then it would just get stuck and it would crash. And I was like, no, but what happens? And then eventually I got a legit version and then I just played through it properly. But like, and I think it came up on Steam remastered recently, 2-3 years ago. It's great. I replayed it again. So I think that's like my love is mostly for the first game. And I think it's the most grounded. I love 3 as well as for what you were saying there, because it's like it's crazy, it's out there, it's in theme with the game. And I think I really do wish more games actually had more FMVs. There's something about the fact that you have these real actors talking about the game. It's not animated, and I don't know if it's because particularly with Red Alert, because everyone knows it's just ridiculous. It's just stupid. Everything that they're saying, the story is insane and stupid, but it's just good fun. I think that's what it is. It's just a lot of good fun. The gameplay is pretty good as well. There's a lot of classic RTS rock paper scissors with the gameplay. There's no unit that's just good at everything. Everything has its weaknesses, and everything can be countered in some way. And just understanding those strategies and synergies and counters is always just good fun.
Yeah, the third one refined that like rock paper scissors element and the unit variety. Like even the unit for the Allied forces is a shotgun wielding, like it's just like a little basic foot trooper. They're the most powerful, but their range is shorter. They can whip out riot shields to get a defense buff and just push their way in. Whereas like the Soviet basic unit can throw Molotov cocktails to like burn out a garrisoned building. They're a bit cheaper and they die a bit easier. Like, you know, it plays on the tropes. Like the Allied ones are UN peacekeepers apparently. But it's also like, even the finesse at the different unit tiers is quite good. You can really just choose any of the superpowers and be like, every single unit has a role to play, which I think makes this particular installment of the series excel. But it's a great series in and of its own. Ed, back to you. What's for our second round of games?
I don't know which one is that.
You don't know. How about Homeworld? Do you want to go
Homeworld?
there?
Yeah, all right, we'll go Homeworld. Yes.
I've heard of Homeworld. I don't know much about it though. Like it was
I would highly recommend it. It is a lot of for a lot of these games I played them for their campaign and the stories, and I think Homeworld takes the cake. Honestly, with the story, that's part of the.
Be cool.
Yeah, no, but I think I'm pretty on very solid ground with this. The original game. It's just very epic, and to contrast with an FMV, the storytelling in the original game is all just it's 2D. There's no motion in the in the story. The story is told in two different ways. Either they use the in-game engine, and there's something happening, or you meet this spaceship for the very first time, or the civilization or aliens for the very first time, and then they kind of like rotate the camera around the ships, and then while they're talking on the speakers, versus in between missions. So while like it's loading to the next mission, they show you just this 2D. I don't even know how to describe it. Kind of like a almost watercolor painted kind of style to the art, and it's just that there's no motion to it. You don't even see like people in those shots. It's just like a scene, right?
Is it text? Is it accompanied by text or is it narrated?
There's no text. It is narrated.
Oh,
okay, yeah, good. And the voiceover for the narration is so good. It's so cool. And the music for the games is so like space opera epic, and you have these like massive. Okay, so what is this game about? So Homeworld, it's in the name. It's Homeworld. So the campaign is, and this the multiplayer and skirmish gameplay. But the campaign is, so you start off on this desert planet at the very outer edge of the universe or the galaxy, and a lot of the story. And I love these like old school games. This came out from '99. And I had the original one with the manual, and those games back then. Do you remember, like, they had like little short stories about the history and the lore of the thing, and it never comes up in the actual game itself. But it's just
wasn't even on the disc at the time. It was on like the hard copy manual, or like the box cover.
Book, guys. They used to have trees, right? And we cut these trees into little tiny slices, and then we put words on them.
Like some of these books, are like manuals, like actual
and
manuals
constantly
with lore.
Stuck. You couldn't like change the page to anything else. It's just like a thing. You physically flip it.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the background of the story is that you have. So these people have been fighting amongst themselves for centuries, millennia kind of thing. And they slowly like build themselves up technologically. And then because it's a desert planet, like most of it's uninhabitable. And then eventually, they stop fighting each other or they fight each other to exhaustion. And then someone discovers a starship buried in the deep desert. And they're like, what the hell is this? Is it aliens? Who knows? And then they eventually piece things together and they figure out, actually, our people are not originally from here. They crash landed on this planet, and we're from somewhere else. And because it's a desert planet, they're using up all of its resources. The planet is dying. It's like, all right, we're going to build this mothership, this massive, like scythe, like half moon shaped ship. And we're going to put 500,000 people on it. Because in the starship, they find this map. It's like, here's where we are, center of the galaxy. That's where our homeworld is. let's go home kind of thing. It's like, all right, let's sign up for it. It take decades to build this ship and decades to develop like faster than light technology, and then they think, all right, let's test the technology. We make the first jump in the mothership, and you're in command of the ship and the fleet. You jump out to where you've been prepared for, and then when you get there, you're attacked by aliens. It's like, oh no, what's happening? Oh, okay, so obviously there's hostile powers here. Let's go back to the desert planet to warn everyone, to defend. And you get back there, and everything's on fire.
Oh, dear.
And I don't want to give away too much, but basically that's the impetus for, all right, we have no other option now. Before it was like, we'll take 500,000 people, we'll go, come back maybe for everyone else, and now everyone else is dead. All that is left of us are these 500,000 people sleeping in their cryo chambers plus whoever's in the fleet. And it's like, okay, all right, we have to go. We can't stay here. We have to develop, and that's where you develop new ship types and you encounter other aliens. And just bit by bit, you just inch closer and closer back to the homeworld and then discover more things about your species' past and history and why you were out there in the first place. And it's just a really interesting, cool story when you get through it and you step through these steps and you get further and further in, and then you discover the forces that are fighting against you and why they're doing that. Yeah. And then you get bigger and bigger and cooler ships, and you have massive, destroyers and battle cruisers, and you have tiny like little fighters just flying around. And you can zoom in and just see like everything that is happening from the little fighter's point of view, like massive capital ships next to you. And yeah, it's just an amazing game. It's a really cool game.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's not a lot of games like this. Yeah.
I remember like when this came out, it was quite different, but I didn't realize the story was such a big part of it. Well, for you and just for like people who played it, because with these kind of games, usually it's about the action, the visuals, and the stories just like there in the background driving it, whether it's silly or serious. But that's really cool. Johnny, I think this would have been your jam. Did you ever play it, or is it one you might look back at?
Never came across this. No, it looks really interesting.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like it's a real-time strategy game?
Yeah, it is real-time. You can pause the game at various points because it can get quite complicated because like there's 3D things going all over the place and your ships over here and there and stuff like that. But yeah, but it is real-time. And again, like a lot of real-time games, there's a lot of rock, paper, scissors type to it. So you get bombers to take out capital ships, fighters to take out the bombers, and so on and so forth. And this is what you have showing on there is the original version from '99, and they did a remastered in 2013. Everything's being remastered in 2016-ish, I want to say. And that plays basically the same. It just looks better. And if you were to play it, I highly recommend it. It's always going on sale on Steam every 3 months, it seems. And it's definitely worth picking up for $10 or whatever it's on. Like, it's a really, like, I played so much of that game, and it just still gives me those like, it's just yeah.
That's the beauty of those like retro games, hey, where it's like something you played back then, you're like, nothing else does that thing for me, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But I think that's the thing about a lot of the games, because we have, you made us pick a particular game in a series rather than talk about a whole series.
Do it.
27 hours for each series. But I think for every game, because this is the first out of 3, like the gameplay is perfectly fine. I think a lot of times we think about that, each game the next one is better than the last one because it's newer, right? Surely. Yeah. But I think a lot of times they just play it differently. And sometimes, like with this one, there's nothing I can really like critique about this particular game. It just plays really well now, or 25 years ago when it first came out. Like the gameplay there's nothing wrong with it really, and it can still. I'm sure, like in 25 years, if I'm still around, I'll be replaying it. I'll still have a good time with it.
Awesome, yeah. That's awesome. No, awesome. You have a passion for that game. Johnny, what do you got for us next?
Well, as I had hinted, John drove to our houses and said, talk about a strategy game or else.
Put this on your list, Johnny. I literally did. I made him people of Perth. I'm sorry.
No, but I was very happy to talk about Sid Meier's Civilization. And to give a bit of, thinking we're only about 3 months or less than 3 months away from the release of Civilization 7, if you can believe it. So I was quite happy to give a bit of love to the OG Civ, which came out, I think, in 1991 or thereabouts. And what you can see here is the formula that was contrived in the early 90s, where you'd work your way through different technologies and unlock different military units and that kind of thing, and you just sort of get this opportunity to kind of do a bit of historical reenactment if you wanted to, and I'm just reflecting on how this entry started a love for the Civilization series that has continued to this day. And I was looking at my Steam played tally for Civ games, and I was a little bit shocked to see that I'd put 400 hours into Civ 6. And so, yeah, no, I just thought definitely worth shouting out the OG Civ and some of the great units that would come up. I know, John, you had some favourites.
Yeah, I mean, even watching this footage makes me nervous because that city is unguarded. What are you doing? Don't leave it unguarded. There are barbarians, as anyone knows. The red barbarians can come at any time and take that city. Guard that shit.
They had barbarians in the first game.
They do. They had barbarian tribes, like the red. They were cavalry, but they weren't separate tribes like in later games. They were just like they'd rock up. They're pretty weak. But like that also brings back the memory where like I remember playing this game and I was pretty far in, like only once because it's a long game. I didn't really have the patience for these kind of games. With my battleship cruisers. And one of the other civilizations just had, like, they were so far back in the Stone Ages or whatever. They had flanks guarding their city. And I remember just like, you're on the corner, Johnny, like you're on the corner of the water. And you're like, that's how I get in there. I attacked the city with my battleship cruiser and it got destroyed by Greek flanks. I'm like, I don't know. How does that even work? What the hell is going on there? That's absolute BS. And I think I actually gave up on the game at that point. I didn't finish that campaign. I was like, if my battleships cannot beat the flanks, you got it all wrong. It's not right. But yeah, seeing this footage like just floods back the memories. Like it was such a special game because you guys remember like when the game starts up, it shows how Earth was created, and it's such a freaking cool like scene. And then there was so much to this game for a very old game back in, I think it's the 90s, Johnny, where you can choose from all these civilizations and they had their own color. They had their own like you could. So they didn't have like their own unique houses, but like they had their own like locations on the map and lots of different maps you could pick, and they had their own leader that you could meet.
Yeah, I think I remember in the original you got to build a palace as you went along.
Oh
and
yeah,
there were three different styles you
like
could
a
go
castle, a palace, and a temple.
You
type
could
style.
build like a kind of Greek temple style, like the Parthenon, or you go down like a Taj Mahal kind of route. And as it's been so many years since I've played the original, but I just remember, as you go along, you got to build your palace, and that was kind of like a cool little feature of the original. It's such a. Just seeing this footage and watching that footage of that archer moving along, it's just just bringing me back.
We didn't play the originals, did we, Johnny?
No, I did back in the day, but it's been
I did too.
Such a long time. Such a long time. Ed, are you a Civ fan?
Not from the first one, but from the second one. I remember like my brother taking me and saying, "Hey, you want to play this game together?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll play this game." And that was back in the day. Another history lesson. Hot seat. This term where you could play on the same computer at the same time, guys.
Yeah, Hot seat was amazing.
Games like that these days anymore, but someone could anyway. Because it's turn-based, I think that's perfectly fine because you just wait for each other to take its turn. I think the one thing I'd say about the modern iterations where you can play each other's turns simultaneously and then move on, so you have to wait for like an hour, because I know I take ages to just make sure everything is optimized. I have to think about like, if I move this person here, that means I can't do that. Okay, I'll come back to this one 20 minutes later.
That's where the 400 hours comes from, isn't it?
Not 20 minutes later. But particularly by the end game, you have so many options, so many things to be in control of. I'm like, but I think I love this. Yeah, there's so many things I love about this game. I think probably a lot of my early knowledge about the world and history comes from this game. Like, I think it's a Civilopedia in that original one. I think in the future ones, they call them just Civpedia. I don't actually remember what it's called, but it's that button there. And just, tell all this, like, history
Mm,
about
yeah.
these various civilizations and leaders, including about how Gandhi was a mass murdering nuclear psychopath. Right?
Gan-
You know,
And he built the
Gandhi's
Great Wall
always-
too,
truth
or
like
whatever.
that. Because
Yeah.
it's just
Gandhi's
telling the truth,
always
man.
on rampage in these games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always. You know, he's a terrible person. I don't know why they keep putting him in the game. Really, it's really very bad for the youth of today. And yeah, but honestly though, like I learned so much about the world because of these games. And also just it's just fun exploring, building, settling cities, getting really pissed off when someone places a city exactly where I was going to, or half the area. It's like, well, it's not going to be optimum if I put something there. Now it's and the settler just like took 20 turns to get to this spot. And I was like, what am I going to do with you now? Those are the really rage quit moments there. Yeah, and or is there someone just coming around, like barbarians coming around and stealing your workers? I'm like, at you. Yeah, but it's a really fun game. You just want to just take over the world, or have these relationships with other civilizations. And I'm really looking forward to this next one. I think one of the things I love about, I think since 3 was when they had the narrators for every time you had the quotes. Every time you research something, and then they had this quote by this famous person read out by whoever the narrator for that game was. I think the first one was Leonard Nimoy from memory. 6 was Sean Bean from Game of Thrones. I can't remember 5. They're all just great
I think
voices.
for 7 they've got someone
Gwendolyn
from
Christie.
Gwendolyn Christie
Yeah,
from
Gwendolyn
Game of
Christie,
Thrones.
who I love. I love all the voices, all the narrators, and every time sometimes it's like research something, I just like sit there, just listen. This is just nice. Or every time you finish a wonder of the world, and then they just zoom in and just build the thing piece by piece. They're just watching that, and again, the narrator would say something about the wonder. It's like it's satisfying. It's just really nice. It's a very cool feeling when you're not, enraged by someone stealing your settler city spot.
Yeah.
Gandhi.
Me and John have talked about on the show how that you can just be kind of chilling, doing your thing, and then suddenly Attila the Hun turns up out of nowhere and it's going to ruin your day.
Yeah.
Attila the Hun. Always doing it with Gandhi. Look out, people. There's a history
Could be
lesson
working
in
with Gandhi.
Civilization.
Wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
those two teaming up. Well, my next one goes back into fantasy land a little bit, but it's based on a major franchise, Lord of the Rings. So there's quite a
Oh, nice.
Well, there's a couple of Lord of the Rings real-time strategy. There's card games, there's a range of games, but the one I picked in particular, which is still very, very old, an old school, is the Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2. So this game kind of came out towards the end of when we saw that wave of games like Command & Conquer 3, Supreme Commander, all those games winding down. And it was done by EA and they had an enormous budget. So they're able to use a lot of the graphics, like in the artwork and all those kind of things from the trilogy, and it just built on the hype of the trilogy. But as a game, it was absolutely brilliant. It had really fleshed out campaigns. And the second game in particular looked at bringing in new factions that you didn't see in the original trilogy. So I brought in the dwarves and the elves, and then goblins, separate to like the Mordor and orcs and the Isengard or Urukai. So it's kind of like a Lord of the Ring like fan dream come true. And yeah, it's very much like your typical strategy game where you build your base, you get your units out, and your ultimate goal. Like there were some missions, but a lot of the missions like had the end goal of wiping out the enemy base. But what made this really cool at the time is that all the units kind of did, and this is something I just love with real-time strategy games, is where they have a lot of character to them, or they do what you would hope or expect them to do. So when you build orcs, they'll come out and they'll start being like, let's go cut them down. They'll talk in a really gruff voice, and they're like, they don't walk normally. They're like all like hunched and huddled, and they've got 2 like weapons, and they look very orky or whatever, so to speak.
Yeah,
they look really
bow-legged.
distinct.
Bow-legged.
Yeah, bow-legged. And
Mm.
and they die, like they die really easy. You can just produce them en masse, very cool. But then you look at so those are the Mordor orcs, but then you look at like the Isengard orcs, and they're like armored to the hilt, like in the movies and the books, with like actually decked out huge shields, proper armor. You get a range of Isengard orcs like crossbow wielders, which do high damage but shorter range. You get warg riders as well, just like in the movies, which is really freaking cool. But I really love the goblin faction that they introduced, because we didn't really see many goblins in the movies, except the first movie, I think, when they went under Moria, with the Balrog and all these pals were there, because they're all pals. But they had some really cool units, like they had giants, and with the giants, like they're freaking big, but they wouldn't just attack. You could pick up like a boulder and throw a boulder like across the screen, which is a huge amount of space in the game, and do long range siege attacks, which is really interesting. Or spider riders could just like climb the walls of your enemy settings and do poison attacks to debilitate your enemies. So for me, this was kind of like a Lord of the Rings, yeah, like fan dream come true. I just really loved what they did with all the hero units and the buildings. And it had a mechanic that I liked that I didn't see in any other games, where when you build a building, you could just build turrets onto it. Like you didn't have to build separate turrets or network them back to power or anything, obviously. But yeah, you could just build them onto a building to make that building stronger and to defend it. But yeah, this game was fantastic. And there's a huge modder community out there who's like, I saw there's one like Age of the Ring or something it took 7 or 8 years to build, and they built in all these additional factions like the sub kind of like human allies that team up with Gondor, like the Highlanders and all those kind of things. So if you're into this stuff, it is a bit hard to play. Like, we're talking about older games now, which might be 10 years, 20, and I don't remember how old Sim City is, but like we go back pretty far. This game is probably a game that looks a little bit old, but if you're into modding in Lord of the Rings, it's probably the best Lord of the Rings RTS game out there. Did either of you guys come across this at the time, or were you knee-deep in Alexander the Great, Gandhi and pals at the time? Understandably.
Probably was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought this one might not be as well known.
I think out of everything we're going to be talking about today, I think is the one that I haven't played.
Yeah, and it might be hard to go back and play it too. Like even now, it just looks a bit old, but it's really good if you're missing Lord of the Rings. Killer soundtrack too. Ed, what's your last one? We've done Homeworld. We've done what, XCOM. I think we're doing Total War. Is that
Total
right?
War.
The OG.
I think yeah. Shogun Total War.
Yes.
And yeah, just another one
Creative
that
Assembly.
I think if they remastered, I mean technically they made a remaster with Shogun 2 Total War, and it is in most respects a superior game, the second one, to be fair. But this, and you can see the original one from 99, I think. It is from its time, it's from its period. But I think, the reason why they made all the future ones is because of this original one and how amazing it is, and like the core of it has not changed, right? You have, similar to XCOM, right? You have these 2 levels of strategy. You have the overworld, where you're trying to take over these various provinces.
It's a map of Japan, literally, like, isn't it? Like all the different provinces.
It's a literal map of Japan missing
a bit
the
like
top
Risk,
title.
almost like moving.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah,
kind of like Civ in the sense, like these regions that you want to take over, and then as you take over a region, you get its income. You can build new units there. You can build a castle to defend, and things like that. So similar to the main difference between this original one and the modern games in the Total War series is that you move an army on this map from one region to the next, and that's it, right? It's Risk in the sense, like if the border of your region touches something else, you can move straight into there in one turn, done, right? And then have a fight about it. Whereas in the modern game, it's all very much more realistic in the sense that they move along a specific spot on the map, right? They can move along the road, and then eventually they run out of movement points and they end up on this road, or they can try to hide in this forest or whatever. So there's a lot of like granularity in the modern games, which this one is just a region and it's simplistic. And you have these tokens representing the armies, and just move them wherever the heck you want if it's in range. And that's the overworld level, and then the RTS level, though you can pause the game at any point unless you increase the difficulty, where you can't pause the game from challenge yourself, and you're in control. So you move this army to this region, or you're being attacked, and now you're in control of whatever units you had in that army. And then you position them around, and you can, make them, if you want to cover a wider area, you can spread out the line, but then that makes it more vulnerable to like a charge because there's only like 1 or 2 units in the line, or you can clump them all up, make it deep, particularly like if you're facing a cavalry charge, it's harder for them to penetrate and, slaughter your guys if they're just having to, connect with
to
this
like cut through
massive
the ranks
infantry.
and then come around.
Exactly, yeah. So the physics of that, so the base gameplay with that is the same with the modern games. Is the physics of it is much more refined in the modern games. It's much more realistic, basically. And whereas in the earlier game, it's much more simplistic. Particularly if you hit anything from the side or from the rear, you basically slaughter everyone very, very quickly. So it's a very easy way to win that way. But still, I still love that. That again, what I've said before is like I love these sorts of games where you have this progression and you can follow, you build up your army, and you win or you lose, and whatever you have surviving, that's what you have for the next fight. And you try to build that up, and then going to the next fight, and just eventually you're slowly taking over the world or losing, whatever it is, and then so whatever you go into the next fight is based on what you had previously, plus whatever reinforcements you bring in, rather than start from scratch like in Age of Empire, whatever it is, start from nothing, build it up again, finish a game, start from nothing, build it up again. And this one you can have reinforcing armies from different regions coming in, and they'll come in from the side or from the rear depending on like the point in which in the map that they're entering. And it's just good fun. Like it's in terms of like simulating
like a
fight
war,
between
basically.
armies.
Like a
This
huge
is,
war and
I think,
battle.
pretty close. And I think particularly in the later games, you can have like thousands or tens of thousands of individual units on the ground. In the modern games, you have like the the Warhammer series games and the Three Kingdoms era games where it's bring in magic and everyone has like special, like the heroes have special abilities and stuff like that. Whereas in these classic games, it's like you have spearmen, you have swordsmen, you have different types of cavalry, you have archers, and that's basically it, kind of thing. And yeah, it's still, again, even though it's like it's old, like the base gameplay I think holds up. It's just a different variant of the modern games, I think is how I would describe it. If they made like a remastered version of just this without all the gameplay changes that they made. I love the second one. I love the second Shogun. I love most of the games in the series, but they just made it remastered this. I'll play it. I'm sure absolutely no problem, no question.
You wouldn't be the only one.
I don't think you can even find this one on Steam. I think the earliest one you can find on Steam is like Medieval 2, which is like the third game in the series. The first two, I've not looked, but I've never seen it come up on my list of things. So, yeah.
I mean, like, I guess if people hadn't got into the series and they played the new games, they wouldn't be missing out on too much because there were so many enhancements, like graphically, mechanics, all that stuff, like you discussed. But
exactly. I think if you play any of the games in this series, most of them, I think, it just depends on your particular fantasy. Do you want to fight in medieval Japan, medieval Europe, the Napoleonic era, or ancient Rome? There's like 3 games based in ancient Rome. Just pick your pick your setting, and then the games are all pretty good overall. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like when this came out. So this like just created a template for this style of game, and like it's been prolific since. Like you said, I think it balances that tactical level gameplay really well with the actual battles, and you can auto do the battles if you get sick of it. But I loved the battles. Like that was like the meat and potatoes for me. But I think what's really cool about this game is like when it came out, we didn't really have any games set in not ancient Japan back in the day. And you could choose the various time periods in Japan to do a campaign in, and the various I don't know if they're called houses or just like
clans.
The different clans, which is great. And at that tactical level, I don't think it was overly complex. Like it didn't take a lot of resource management. Like it was simple building. But also there were some really cool things like the ninja. I don't know if you remember, you could recruit ninjas and geisha and emissaries. So you could use a ninja to knock off an enemy commander, which would lower morale, or a geisha to knock off an enemy daimyo, and you get like a percentage of like chance it's going to succeed. And I'm not going to lie. I remember like it's like 60% chance. I'm like, do it, fail, reload, do it again until I clean that daimyo up, and take his land, because these are long games. I ain't got time to to roll the dice and build more geisha to go like try kill someone. But they were fantastic, and there was a great expansion called the Mongol, like about the Mongol Empire, where they had bombers. I don't know if you remember that, very cavalry heavy, fantastic, and the music. Oh gosh, brilliant! But we're running out of time. We need to zoom through. Johnny, what is your last one for today's episode?
I'm going to take you from all these historical settings to a galaxy far, far away. And my favorite RTS from the late 90s is Star Wars Rebellion. Now, this is in typical Star Wars RTS fashion, you get to choose a faction, the Empire or the Rebellion, and this game basically lets you loose on the galaxy, and you can choose the size. There's 3 settings in this game. You can go from a sort of minimalist galaxy to very expansive, and you work your way through all these different kind of resource management mechanics to build up your forces to try and basically win the galactic civil war. So if you're the Empire, you're trying to populate the world with stormtroopers to sort of keep them under control and not let the sort of rebels, the rebellion, get too out of control. And you have the option, because this takes place immediately after Star Wars: A New Hope, so you have the option to go off and start building a second Death Star, just like in the movies, if you're playing as the Empire, which takes a lot of resources. So it's a bit of a pitfall if you go down that path, because it will suck up a lot of your resources. Whereas if you're playing as a Rebellion, you're more likely to try and play off the popular support mechanic. So you'll see all the red stars are star systems that are following the Rebellion, and then the green ones are those held by the Empire. And so what you're trying to do, especially when you're playing a campaign as the Rebels, is you're trying to start uprisings on all the different systems to try and get them over to your side, so you get access to their resources, which are displayed through the mechanic of mines and refineries. So in order to be able to build fleets, build starfighters, TIE fighters or X-Wings, you need to have mines and refineries. And I think it's got a really clever mechanic to manage that resource management, because each mine and refinery equals a unit of maintenance capacity. So you can't just, it kind of keeps the game a little bit, gives the game a little bit of a realism, because one side can't just build everything, because it needs to maintain its maintenance capacity. And so once you do get to a point where you've built up fleets and that kind of thing, you start to have some sort of direct conflict across different systems. Each faction, what I really love about this game is each faction has its own kind of strengths and weaknesses. So if you play as the Empire early on, you've got a lot of advantages, because you've got better developed capital ships, and you've got kind of greater supremacy. Whereas the Rebels, if you play as Rebels at the start, you kind of got to play a bit more clever and try and avoid direct engagements initially, while you're building up your ship type technology. And the game also has a really good sort of tech tree kind of advancement mechanic, where you can kind of boost it up, because if you send your personnel, and that can be like famous characters from the movies and Star Wars media, to do kind of tech research, and that can fast track your way through the tech tree. I think the strategic element of this game, even to this day, holds up really well. It's so addictive. This week, while preparing for the show, I thought I'll play for a couple of hours just to get reacquainted with the game before I talk about it on the show. But then, 10 hours later, I'm still hooked on a campaign in Star Wars Rebellion.
Awesome.
Another reason I really love this game is it came out at a time when the Timothy Zahn Star Wars novels were out. So this game draws very heavily on that lore that was in those Star Wars books at the time in the 90s. So it's, if you are a person who's maybe not loving the Disney era of Star Wars, and you're kind of pining a little bit for that era of that 90s era of Star Wars, this will be quite the ticket for you.
Awesome. Ed, did you get into this? Because I feel like Johnny's learned about Homeworld from you, and I'm not sure if you've not seen this or not, or whether, because I think you might get into this.
I think I do. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Absolutely. I thought that's funny. Just like listening to you talk about Lord of the Rings and listening to Johnny talk about this, I feel like if all just put into like the Total War series, just have this game for that, I'd definitely be into that.
Hey,
I'm sure they would do the Starship.
They'll watch our show, Ed, so it's all good. This is why we do it.
Absolutely. Creative Assembly, yeah, there in Sega. Is it still Sega? I find it really odd that Sega developed the Total War series.
I think they're the publisher. I don't know if they're the developer. I know they publish it.
I find that just very interesting. But yeah, I think this would be something I'll get into absolutely as well. Like yeah, it just I didn't come across this, but it's definitely up my alley for sure.
Yeah, cool.
I love the setting. I love Timothy Zahn books absolutely.
What I would say is that I think probably the space combat mechanic of it hasn't aged as well, and I almost feel like this is a game that could use a modern remake, like just to bring in sort of more polished kind of space combat, because it was the 3D models probably don't look as sharp as they for like late 90s graphics. It was okay, but I think probably hasn't held up as well compared to some games in that respect. But the strategy side of it, and all sorts of little things like when you load your save game, it's Princess Leia feeding the disc to R2D2 thing, little touches like that.
Fan service kind of thing. Yeah.
This fan service was like fan service to the max in this game from the 90s.
I feel like we're kind of, we are privileged in a way to have grown up in that era to play these games, because a lot of people won't go back and play them. And if you're disillusioned with the Disney Star Wars universe, some love it, some hate it. Like, it's cool that we have this. I love to know that, Johnny, you can be like, oh, just check it out. I'm going to go play it because I just love going back there, and it still holds up.
It is hard, like with video games compared to say movies or series. You can't, like a movie, an old movie, you can get done in 2-3 hours, whatever. But to play a game takes tens of hours at least to really just to finish it. Never mind just to experience it. And yeah, so I think it's really unfortunate that for some people, on the flip side, that's partly they don't have time to play these games because you have lots of new amazing games coming out all the time. So, yeah.
Some nice FMV in this game too, like your victory scenes are very cool, and like you have like my favorite is when you take the capital of the galaxy, Coruscant. There's a great little scene of the rebels like storming the Imperial Palace. It's done really well. It's nice little touches like that throughout the game.
Love that era.
They need more FMVs. I don't know why they don't do more FMVs. Money costs.
I think that's it.
Just bring in some unknown random actor. I don't freaking care. It's
Holly Valance.
It's gonna be so B. They're all the red ones are very B grade. Very deliberately.
Hey, don't call Xena B grade. Do not call my Xena B grade. Lucy Lawless for the win, man.
Which one was she? I can't remember.
She was
Lucy
in Metal 3. She had yeah.
Anyway,
I think she was like a commander or something. Yeah.
What's you
don't need big names. You just need to. Anyway, yeah.
What's our final game, Johnny?
Well, speaking of FMV, there's a little bit more for those people of Perth and beyond who needed to hear. We're going to wrap up with one of my all-time favorites, keeping with the sci-fi theme. This is Emperor Battle for Dune. So I know that Dune Spice Wars came out relatively recently. We haven't seen a game in the Dune series for quite a long time, and people are into that. But look, don't play that. Go back and buy this, even if it's like 20 years old, because it's heaps better. It has the FMV. It has the real-time strategy. It has like the diverse range of units that's just focused on like blowing everything up. It's really, really good. So I think a lot of people like me would have grown up with the original Dune games. Like Dune 2 was the first RTS kind of Dune game. It was awesome. Brought in a whole new house, like the House Ordos, which was not in the lore, in addition to the Harkonnens and the Atreides. And then that got a remake for Dune 2000. But I think it accumulated in this game, Emperor Battle for Dune, because this kind of like Battle for Middle-earth 2, it kind of brings all your like dreams to a reality. So the units are a lot more sophisticated. I won't harp on about it, but each of the factions are just really interesting. For example, the Harkonnens have like a giant buzzsaw, as you would. That's just a car. It's just a buzzsaw with a wheel, and it just mows through enemy units and cuts them to bits. But you can also use it to shred up your enemy's spice stock. So very cool tactically that way. My favorite house personally was House Ordos, the one they invented, because it was it was just being cool being told by like this space robot human thing, which really fits in the universe, that, you know, you're going to be executed if you don't succeed in the mission every freaking time. It's like, you know, you can't fail. We're going to kill you if you don't win. You're like, thanks, great, the pressure's on. And they had killer music too. But essentially, yeah, you would play through a mission-based structure. You could choose from 3 houses. And then again, something that elevated this game for me is that you could ally with one of the sub-factions, which is just kind of like what you always wanted as someone who played the old games. So you could ally with the Fremen, the Emperor's Sardaukar, like the specialists, like soldiers who just like ripper units on the battlefield, the Guild, House Tailaxu, the Ix. You could have your pick, and there'd be a little story between them all. And look, spoiler alert, it's not the Emperor who's the bad guy this time. It's the Emperor Worm, and we see them in their glory, and it's just wrong. If you are going to stay,
worms.
I know. It's like, oh, that's when the books went bad. In my view, I shouldn't say that, but they did. Yeah, but if you want to watch John Rhys Davies, you know, doing some FMV action, go watch this. It's really cool. If you feel like you want to play a really good Dune game and the latest Dune Spice Wars isn't for you, honestly, this will hit the spot, and it feels very much like the original Dune movie too, with the cutscenes. Did either of you guys see this or into the Dune universe stuff at all?
I played the first 2 Dune games. The first one on the Sega, so that was not the most optimal platform to be playing it on. But it was just, it was good. I think particularly since I played it around the time when first Red Alert was out. So I think you can see that history, that link between one game and the next. And I also played other, because there were quite a few Dune games. I can't remember what they were called though, which specific ones after the first 2 I played. I didn't play this one, I'm pretty sure. But I love sandworms. Love watching them just going around the sand, going after the harvest. It's like, get it out of there. And
well, you would love this because one of the units is like a Fremen Feyakin who can summon worms to ride, so you can just mow through your enemies. You're like, done, mailing with them. Why would I not? But look, people of Perth and beyond, we have sucked up all your time, obviously. Thanks for watching the whole episode. That is 6 retro-ish games from across a broad range of genres. We've gone full sci-fi at the end. We hope some of you grew up on these games like we did, and we know you love the Nintendo stuff, but we just can't talk about Nintendo all the time.
I talked about Bowser. Hey, come on. It's all good.
We slotted him in there. At least we haven't tried to sell the Super Nintendo Classic Mini this episode for, I think it's $49.99 on PerthGamingCrew.com under the shopping. No, not quite. But look,
Fire Emblem.
Yeah, exactly. Fire Emblem 3 Houses is a better one. So, to wrap up, go have a great weekend, everyone. Johnny and I will be back for our final episode in a couple of weeks. And look, holidays are coming up. Go play some old school tactical strategy games. But that's for now, that's the Perth Gaming Crew Show. Over and out. See you later.
Bye.